bu ñu dellusee ca
If we return to the signs of Allah
la ñu tuddee la
and seek to view it through His divine name Ar-Rahman, its simplest interpretation, as perceived in the earthly realm, corresponds to what people generally express Ar-Rahman, the one who holds and dispenses mercy on earth. However, beyond this apparent reality, it is appropriate to adopt another approach by projecting ourselves into the signs of Allah, to which the Lord alludes when He declares, "Say, the soul is a matter from the command of my Lord, and you have been given but little knowledge." If we take the divine name Ar-Rahman and place it within the framework of the soul, an in-depth study reveals the existence of processes that govern the functioning of the human organism without affecting the soul. A human being comes into the world as a baby. Then, at a certain stage of development, begins to crawl before learning to stand. Subsequently, they take their first steps, acquire the ability to walk, and then reach adulthood. However, if Allah grants them a long life, they eventually enter the phase of old age. Thus, when we consider this process from the perspective of the divine name Ar-Rahman, we observe that certain mechanisms allow the human being to pass through youth before reaching old age. This cycle of gradual transformation, which rhythms human existence, fully aligns with the manifestation of divine mercy, Rahman. For the mercy that Allah instills in His creations, particularly among humans and jinn, motivates Allah to follow and accompany every moment of the human life process, so that it may have a harmonious beginning and evolution according to His supreme wisdom. The Lord has never abandoned man to himself. From the moment of conception in the mother's womb until birth, He grants him the air he breathes, regulates the process of his life, and ensures the proper functioning of his organism. He guides him through the various stages of his existence, from youth to maturity, until he becomes responsible for his actions. And when old age arrives, where his organs begin to lose their vigor, He still accompanies him until he reaches the point of needing a cane to walk. All of this stems from the manifestation of divine mercy. This is why Allah accompanies the human being throughout this process of transformation and evolution. However, if we focus on the distinction between what pertains to the body and what belongs to the soul, we notice that the process governing the organization and functioning of the human body does not affect the soul. Indeed, when the soul is breathed into the organism, it does not follow the evolution tied to the age of the human being. While the body undergoes the effects of time and traverses different phases, the soul remains unchanged in its profound nature. This is precisely why the human being follows the cycle of evolution mentioned earlier. They begin by crawling, learn to walk, reach maturity and responsibility, start a family, and eventually enter old age. At each stage, their body undergoes the transformations imposed by time. Take, for example, the foot of a young man capable of running long distances. At a certain age, this same foot, which once covered kilometers with ease, gradually loses its strength and endurance, unable to replicate the same performance as in youth. Thus, the human organism follows this process of transformation under the effect of the divine name Ar-Rahman. Similarly, the soul, at the moment of its insertion into the human organism, also follows a process of paramount importance. If we refer to the world of souls, ALAMUL ARWAH, we observe that each soul already has a framework where Allah has granted it both a spiritual presence and a physical presence. The framework defining the spiritual presence of the soul manifests at the moment when, in ALAMUL ARWAH, the Lord declared, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And the souls unanimously responded, Qalu bala, yes, we testify. It was at this instant that the divine decree determined whether a soul would be that of a man or a woman, as well as the lifespan of the body, destined to host it in this worldly life. Thus, the spiritual presence of the soul was established from Alamul Arwah, long before its interaction with the physical body. This was the moment when the spiritual presence of the soul was sealed in the divine decree. What remained was to establish its physical presence. For the soul to have a corporeal existence in the human organism, Allah decreed a precise starting point, the beginning of creation in the mother's womb, a necessary formality. This process unfolds gradually until the divine reality inscribed under the name Ar-Rahman is fully manifested. The moment when the soul can be considered to have been effectively breathed into the human body corresponds to the completion of a 40-day period in the mother's womb. It is from this point that the former process, inscribed under the divine attribute of Ar-Rahman, reaches its completion. When the embryo has spent 40 days in its mother's womb, it then acquires a physical presence that attests to its existence as a living human being, a presence now certified and guaranteed by the divine decree. However, before this stage, the soul already existed in Alamul Arwah, but in the spiritual realm. Moreover, the divine decree also determined, in the spiritual realm, whether the soul would be destined to inhabit the body of a man or a woman. Still within the spiritual process, the lifespan of the human being who would host it was also decreed by Allah's will. However, before these elements were certified and guaranteed, it was necessary to wait for the formal point, marking the beginning of physical incarnation, to be reached in the mother's womb after 40 days. It is at this precise moment that these divine decrees are fully validated and sealed in earthly reality. This process resembles a pre-established formality in the ghaib world, the unseen, which then manifests in the earthly world. Everything is predetermined in the spiritual realm before the incarnation of the soul. As soon as this process begins under the guidance of the divine name Ar-Rahman, one begins to perceive the reality of their Lord. This perception varies according to the degree of spiritual intensity of each soul. The intensity of the soul at the moment of its infusion into the embryo is proportional to its spiritual presence before its Lord. This instant can thus be considered a pre-established testimony of the individual's spiritual destiny. Their proximity to their Lord, the one who will truly know their Lord, the one who will faithfully follow Him, and the one who will stray from Him. It is at this moment that the spiritual presence is certified and the degree of proximity to the Lord is determined. Now, once this certification is established,